Of course, for much of the second half of 1994 and then the second half of 95, you're going to be spending a lot of time working for Otto Wanz over in Germany and Austria. How do you get booked in those territories in that era?
Very simple. Jimmy Suzuki got me booked. It wasn't by merit. It wasn't by anything else. I got very lucky. So Larry Cameron had died the year before in Bremen in a match. He was in a match with Tony St. Clair. Now, it was during the break, so thank goodness it wasn't in a hold or something. But Larry Cameron died in the ring. None of the Americans came back. And so Otto needed a whole new crew. Well, I'd sent Otto pictures, videos, all this stuff. I figured he looked at all my videos and thought I was wonderful. He didn't look at any of them. He had a picture sitting there. He needed one more guy for his tour. Jimmy Suzuki was sitting in his office, and he goes, "Oh, I know Johnny Hawk. He's a good guy." Otto goes, "Okay, I take him." So that's how I got booked. I mean, I literally got booked just because Jimmy Suzuki happened to be there at the right time.
Talk to me a little bit about just the way wrestling is in Germany. I've heard that there's a round system and there's warnings, or maybe it's yellow cards. Just talk me, because it feels like it's a totally different approach to pro wrestling than we have here. What is different over there? And is it better? Is it worse? I mean, or is it just different? What did you prefer?
Just different. Just different. A lot of guys have a hard time working it, but once you can figure out the style, it's pretty easy. Use the break as part of the work. So you'd have normally 5 rounds, I believe 5 minutes, I believe is what it was. Championship nights were 4-minute rounds, and, guys might work 8 or 9 rounds, quite a long time. Guys usually work 20, 25 minutes a night, but you'd have a 5-minute round, I believe is what it was, with a 1-minute break in between. And, everything else is pretty much the same.
I've always been fascinated by the way this works, because I think there is a piece of business where part of the story is the referee is fining the wrestlers, but the culture is such where fans would offer to pay the fines, and now it becomes a revenue driver for the guys in the match. Do I have this right?
100%. This was the best thing ever. So you would have DDA Gopp was one of the best heel referees I've ever seen. And he a lot of times would find the babyface. And so, you'd find the babyface, well, he'd do it in a heel way. Invariably, some fan would come pay the fine, just kind of to stick it to the referee. Well, then he'd do it again. And, as the match got more and more heated, you have a lot more fines. Of course, nobody's paying the heel fine. Very rarely. Sometimes somebody would. But they'll always pay the babyface fines. And, of course, when you get to the back, you split the money. And so it's like a lot of extra revenue that you'd bring in.
I want to ask you a little bit about, when you're taking a look at this era and you're working in Germany and you're doing these tours for the CWA. I think here in America, when we think about the territory days, we think about, okay, they're going to work these towns once a month or once every 2 weeks or maybe every week. And so you hear, Jeff Jarrett talk about, well, hey, on Monday we were always in Memphis, blah, blah, blah. But when Otto would do it, he would do a tour that would last days and sometimes weeks in the same venue. So we're not moving around. We're hoping we can get the same customers to come back night after night after night. That feels like you're not going to be able to fall into a routine. It's going to push you to your limits creatively. And it has to force growth as a performer if you're doing it in front of the same people every night, right?
Oh, my goodness. So, like in Hanover, you'd have 56 straight nights, 8 straight weeks, 56 straight nights. And people would buy season passes. So you'd see someone sitting on the front row for 56 straight nights. They would come every night. That's what they did. They wanted to come see wrestling, and they'd come during wrestling season, and they would see the tournament. So you'd have all kinds of things in the tournament. You'd have Damen-Tag, which is ladies' night. You'd have special challenge night, which you could challenge somebody outside the tournament. You could challenge them like a cage match or an American match or some type of gimmick match or something like that on Saturday night. And then you'd have championship night. You'd have specials where you'd bring in somebody from usually the U.S. to challenge one of the champions, and you'd have special nights. So you'd have all kinds of nights throughout the week, and not just the tournament going on, but you'd have the same fans in the same seats for 56 straight nights. So you're working with the same guy a lot of times, maybe 7 or 8 times during a tour, because you're rivals and you're fighting for the same position in the tournament in front of the exact same people. So yeah, it is a massive learning experience when you have that.
And do I have it right that a lot of from my understanding, this almost sounds like growing up in the South, you know what I mean. This almost sounds like a tent revival. Hey, there's religious groups coming through and they're going to set up camp here and they're going to do a revival every night. And on some level, respectfully, that's show business too. But from what I understand, the wrestlers here, when we're setting up camp and we're doing these tournaments for weeks at a time, they often live in a camper on the like tournament grounds. So like, hey, there's the venue and there's the camper and that's where all the boys are. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we were in, like, say, Hanover, we lived right outside of the door of the dressing room. So if you want to be at work at 6:30, you leave at 6:29 and 30 seconds and be there 20 seconds early because you stayed right there. We had no bathrooms in our trailers, so we had to go into the hall for the bathrooms. We had no running water, so we had to, bring in buckets of water for, what we wanted. We had heat that was usually electric. So if the fuse went out, you'd wake up in the middle of the night, you'd see your breath in your front of your face. But yeah, we lived in caravans. Now, when I first got over there, I lived in a hostel, which was, a youth hostel in Graz, with a bathroom down the hall, things like that. Did that in Vienna. Then we rented a trailer in Hanover and Bremen from one of the guys to stay in the campground with the guys. But we would stay on the campground in Vienna. Like the next year, I bought a trailer because I was going to be there for a while. It was 6 foot by 16 foot trailer. So my first house was, 96 square feet, whatever it was. And the gypsies were there too because they were running, the carnival part of what we were on. So they would, we lived with the gypsies and we lived like travelers. And exactly, we had caravans just like them. You see the travelers like the old school, movies and stuff. That's how we lived.
I do want to ask, I think you run into a who's who over there. Certainly you would have run into guys like Fit Finley. I think most of us know that. But Ice Train was there. PN News was there. Eric Watts was there. Glenn Jacobs was there. And I think, and this is maybe the biggest head scratcher, Kojima, who I've seen in MLW, he was there. Is this right?
Oh, yeah. Kojima was there for the whole year. Inoki used to send over his young guys that were very promising. So first we got Hiro Yamamoto, who became Tenzin, was over there. And then Kojima came over and was there for a whole season, just getting work. Inoki would do that to send these guys over. And it's kind of like the Briscoes and the Funks, when the Japanese reporters would come over, they would have Kojima working with, a European guy. Well, they would have a finish that looked like Kojima won. So you'd put that in the Japanese magazine, even though Kojima did the job. But you'd change the finish for the magazine and put Kojima over. But yeah, he was there for a whole tour.
You spent some time with Eric Watts. What was your experience like with Eric Watts?
I liked Eric fine. I didn't know him very well. And he was only there for about 6 weeks or something like that. Obviously knew who his dad was, but Eric was fine. Eric was seemed like to be a very nice guy. And I don't know why he only stayed for one tour. He didn't stay that long, but that was what he was booked for. A lot of times Otto would bring over a guy, or Peter William, who they shared booking in different places, would bring over a guy just for one tour, not for the whole 6 or 7 months. And that's what Eric was brought over for.
Do you remember ever meeting Bill Watts? Have you ever met Bill Watts?
I did, yeah, in Tulsa one time, Tulsa and Oklahoma City. He came in and did a show with us and came in and said hi to the boys, was very nice, walked around, shook everybody's hand, very respectful of everybody, yes.
In an alternate timeline, if you were a few years older, you would have been a big Watts guy, wouldn't you? It feels like it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Bill liked the big guys. He liked the rough guys. He started Stan and Frank. And so, yeah, I think, I would have enjoyed working with Bill.